Welcome back to the channel, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you have a wonderful day ahead. Today, I have for you Solving Your Problems Double Game Week 25 edition. We'll be doing a little bit of assistant manager analysis, predominantly on Unai Emery, as I try to sell you on him, I guess, as well as Arne Slot to an extent. I will be looking at benching dilemmas, the staple piece of solving your problems, whether you should be taking hits for certain players, including Bournemouth midfielders, and a few other very important things, and one potential surprise transfer. Now, this is being recorded at 1:26 in the morning on Friday, so it will be out at 8 a.m. on Friday, and thus I won't have any information from the press conferences when recording this. If the news comes that there is a development with injuries, as you will see in the video, then I could make certain moves. So that is something to consider just the time of this recording. But without anything else needing to be said, apart from the fact that if you are one of the thousands of people that regularly watch who have not subscribed, consider clicking the button. In fact, I'll give you a second to go and click it right now. It would really help me out and I would be greatly appreciative. Equally, let's try and get this video to at least 450 likes. That would be magnificent. So now let's hop into it. The content within the videos has certainly taken a shift as of late, given how the landscape has formed within FPL and how we've certainly need to make more decisions from a slightly more strategic perspective. However, for this particular element, I think it's certainly more important to go back to the football analysis and use that as the backbone for making our decision. Now, I expressed in my team selection that I would be going for Unai Emery, and I do in fact think he is the best assistant manager option this week. And I know a lot of you are on the fence about this, and I would like you to do the best you possibly can in FPL. And if I think this is the best decision, then I feel like it is my job to certainly sell you on it to an extent and kind of just get you to understand my perspective a little bit better. There are a few things to discuss. Number one, Aston Villa have not lost at home since game week 2. That's a long time ago. The game they lost, well, firstly, it's Arsenal, and secondly, if you remember, Raya made a couple of brilliant saves, especially the one of Watkins, and Arsenal really had just had a few moments and weren't too threatening in the game. So if that hadn't happened, or a few moments just went the other way, then Aston Villa would have been unbeaten at home this season. Secondly, when it comes to Unai Emery's approach to the best team in the country coming to town, two particular games spring to mind, two big games. Manchester City at home and Arsenal away. And I think he'll employ a very similar structure and approach to what he did against these two. But honestly, have even more respect for Liverpool and make it even harder for them to get beaten by Liverpool. One thing that Liverpool have struggled with, I would say this season, in a relative sense, is their ability to break down these deeper blocks. And I was actually watching like a 2-minute segment of a coach doing a presentation, and he spoke about, and it was on how hard it is now to break down these deeper blocks, given how well coached they are and the athletes that people have in their sides. Villa have a very different structure, I would say, or at least slightly different structure to other teams. It's very much more compact 4-2-4 as opposed to a 4-4-2, and it is very compact. The spaces between the lines are minimal, arguably the smallest that any team boasts, right? And I think that's really important because when you look at the two in the middle, it'll definitely be Onana on the assumption he's fit, which I think he is. Doesn't even have a flag on FPL anymore. And then it'll either be Kamara and Bogard alongside. And we'll talk about Villa's starting lineup because I know some people have concerns about that. That is a very athletic pair, huge dueling capacity, brilliant physicality, just a general defensive understanding and ability within the game. So even getting your better players in between the lines and in those pockets is very difficult and in terms of getting them to affect the game. I consider the game against Manchester City. Foden barely, and I mean barely, got a sniff in between those lines. And that's really what you need when you're breaking down these deeper blocks. For the most part, you want someone in these pockets just to hurt the other team with a bit of creativity. But it's very difficult to do that, especially for these creative type of players, because usually they don't have the same physical profiles as the Sixers do. There are, of course, other ways to break down deeper blocks. I actually think, whilst it seems counterintuitive, Liverpool should lead more on their crosses because their delivery from wide areas in Gakpo, Salah, and Trent is elite. And I actually think that this is like I said, potentially counterintuitive way to break down the low block, to break down a low block, but for them, I think it work. Similarly, I think they should use the left-hand side more in build-up. I don't think they do that enough. I spoke about that against Man United, but I don't necessarily expect them to do that against Villa. So those are all things to consider, that with that block, with how well it's coached, and it almost turns into like a 4-3-3 at times, and that's what I like about it. It's not just your most standard block. It turns into a 4-3-3 at times, and the guy who's not ball side will close a certain passing lane at an angle, and again, it just makes it more difficult to penetrate and break, right? It's very well coached, and they've got the players which can execute his plan, right? The other thing with his general approach in this type of game, I feel like the game model is slightly slower, and the way they attack is slightly slower. I mentioned there that the different attacking approach will be less territorial. I don't think you'll try and overload certain zones, attacking zones, with the number of players that he usually would, or try and have this territorial dominance with loads of players in the opposition half. Rather, I think you'll get something similar to what you saw against Arsenal. He will rely on his attacking transition, and he will rely on a more vertical, quick, direct style of play. Long balls over the top into Watkins, quick vertical passes from Onana into Rodgers, carry, and then go, as opposed to the whole team coming up, and then when they lose the ball on transition, having no sense of numerical superiority, or at least a far lesser sense than you would like against Liverpool, right? So I think that will all reduce the transitions that they will face, and that's probably Liverpool's best way of hurting Villa. So I think that will be good. So that's kind of my analysis there. Now, obviously, Liverpool are the better team. They're top of the league. They are still in good form. Like, yeah, sure, they lost the game against Plymouth and slipped up against Everton, and it wasn't a brilliant performance. And I thought Everton did well, and that's why I think Unai Emery will take a leaf out of that book, because other teams have kind of used that approach against Liverpool, Man United, for example, and it's worked. But they're still Liverpool, right? And you have to respect the quality. But I still think they've got some attacking problems, specifically with Diaz at 9, and specifically the profiles they have at 8 in terms of breaking down deeper blocks, right? As good as Szoboszlai is and has been, it's not just his fault either. It's like what function, what role McAllister has in the side, and a variety of other things, right? So that's that, and I think it's a very fair analysis. Like, I'm not making too many assumptions. And I know one thing that people have an issue with is the players they have fit. I basically think it to be Garcia right back, Digne left back, Disasi centre back, and then one of Bogard or Kamara in the pivot, and one at centre back, probably Kamara at centre back, I would assume. I don't think that's that bad, honestly, especially if you've got Onana in front protecting and you're taking a different approach. Yeah, that's some analysis on Unai Emery. In terms of Arne Slot versus Wolves, just a quick discussion, a very quick one. I don't think this is a slam dunk, and I mentioned this in team selection. So when you're allocating a certain amount of expected points to it, maybe different to the models, I would slightly reduce it compared to what the general consensus is. And who knows, maybe you have Arne Slot and you want to sell him in a very aggressive play. I would be open to it, because I don't love this fixture for him, these fixtures for him. Yeah, obviously Liverpool should win. They probably will win. I expect them to win. I just don't think that his seeding is really there this game week, especially because he blocks on the Liverpool asset. And I don't think Wolves is quite the slam dunk that people think. If you look at the approach they took against Villa, and take the same approach against Liverpool, I know João Gomez will come back into the side. So maybe they try and be a little bit more expansive. But if not, if he plays the role that essentially the substitute did in the pivot for the Villa game, then I think it could be a little bit harder than people. Moving on to the staple piece, benching dilemmas. Now, there are so many assets that you could bench this week, and so many assets that have been spoken about in benching dilemmas that I've seen on the timeline and in the YouTube comments. So I cannot account for every single combination that you have. For example, you might be considering Isak or Mateta, the next person Isak or Wood, the next person Mateta or Wood, right? And so on and so on. So I will just give a general overview of the players, and I will assess a few particular dilemmas, right? Palmer and Isak were ones that I genuinely considered benching for my own team to facilitate with some, more so Palmer. But their floor is what puts me off. Palmer has so many routes to points. Isak's in such good form. Stylistically, it's a good matchup against City. Brighton at least will give you some sense of openness. If Chelsea have a good period, they can exploit. And so for those reasons, not so much their ceiling, but more so the flaws, I'm just going to stay away from benching them. And I personally wouldn't in pretty much all of your spots as well. Moving on to the rest, I'm more comfortable benching Brentford than I think most people are, simply because I just rate West Ham more than most people do, rightly or wrongly. That can be interpreted by yourself. I think under Potter, one, as I've spoken about quite a few times, you have a manager that is probably not so modern, or at least not this season type of modern. It's not, this is my way, we're going to do it. We'll make adjustments within a certain scope, and then we will play this way. No, it's like, okay, I have a huge, very wide range, a very wide scope, and I will find the relevant solution to this team. And 4 back 5, this build up, that build up, right? And I think their defense has actually been quite good. They've got the players who execute, at least in their backline. I think that they are crying out for an athletic 6, but I still think they can do a job. And I think they can make it difficult for Brentford, especially in a game that will probably be slower than Brentford would like. I think Brentford definitely thrive in those quicker games. And I think you'll get a much slower game against West Ham. Also at home, coming off the back of a couple of good performances. Like even at Chelsea, right? Okay, yeah, fine, they lost, but they played pretty well. So for all of those reasons, I'm more okay with benching Brentford than most people, I would say. I guess the last set of attackers to speak about are the Man United player and Bruno and Ahmed, and I think this is very much subjective. Do you think they go there and exploit Spurs' weaknesses and beat them and score goals, or do you think that Spurs just roll them over, right? whichever side you land on, I think aside from there. If I absolutely have to choose, I would probably just play Bruno over Wood. I'm not sure if I could give Ahmad the same level of respect just given the routes to points, but I think I would play Bruno over Wood. It helps that he's a mid as well, right? And then finally, when it comes to defenders, Munoz starts, I think he's got the best fixture. Everton is not easy, as Liverpool found out, but nonetheless, I think he's got the best fixture and the highest upside and the most attacking threat. So Munoz plays. Robinson, for me, is a close second. I think it's certainly a harder fixture against Forest, but with his assist threat, with Fulham's capability to keep a clean sheet, and the fact that they compete with Forest, can compete with Forest physically, which both sides can't, going for Robinson. And then the other two, I just wouldn't start in pretty much any case. And yeah, that's the benching dilemma sorted. Now, as expressed in the introduction, this is being filmed before any press conference is given. We have a Friday deadline. So, what if Cody Gakpo does have a knock? Well, then I will not be here to tell you that, oh, he has a knock and this is my new plan. So I thought just in case, I would assess the prospect now, and then you can take the relevant analysis and apply it to your own team, even though it is team dependent. And it really will be so team dependent. And I really, really would consider planning at least until Game Week 20. You know what you're going to do in the blank game week, because what your trip strategy is going to be will determine your transfers, and what your transfers will be determine what you're going to do now, right? Not just, for example, in 26, but also 27, 28, 29. Right. If he's injured, I'm bringing in Ollie Watkins for a hit, because it's a 4-point investment, and it would either be him or Wissa, right? Now, I'm happy to start 4 points down on Wissa, knowing that Ollie Watkins has an extra game, knowing that Ipswich at home is quite a good game. And I spoke about how I was bullish on his prospects anyway. He's been in the gym. I imagine he'll get on the grass soon. And then hopefully, obviously, on the assumption that Gakpo is out, Watkins gets, like I said, a 70-70 split across the 2 games. And that is enough for me to outscore Wissa. And then from there, it doesn't really matter, right? Because Gakpo was getting sold in 28 anyway. Just sell Watkins. Maybe before that, at some point, regardless. So yeah, and like Cody Gakpo was getting benched for me in 26 because of Manchester City away. Newcastle at home in 27 is tough. Obviously Southampton in 28 at home is quite lovely, but I will just get a striker with better fixtures beforehand. Potentially Matthias Cunha. So for all of those reasons, I'm actually quite comfortable selling him for Watkins and taking that hit. And I'd be confident enough to bench Wissa because of the analysis I've shown on West Ham. The one thing I will say is this will leave me with 1.4 in the bank for the assistant manager chip in Game Week 26. 0.8 plus 0.6, which means I couldn't get Pep in one move. I'm just going to bet on the fact that then the City table bonus won't be accessible. And even if it is, as long as Watkins pays an extra 8 points off, which I genuinely think he can against Wissa, that's effectively just 1 goal and Wissa getting a yellow card, then I'll be at least break even and I can bring in Guardiola. But if not, there's other managers I can attack as well. But yeah, I would be bullish enough to bring in Watkins, especially considering I'm going Emery if Cody Gakpo has a knock. And whether he does or not, I'm not sure. I've just seen some rumours floating about, so I thought I would address it. But I'm sure Slot will give a very straight answer in the press conference. As expressed yesterday, if you would like to join the ward number 5, the ward number 20, multiple top 10Ks, multiple top 50Ks, multiple top 100Ks, and people who have just come from, for example, 1.2 million in 6 weeks since joining the community, all the way down to around 200, 300K, and other success stories like that, then do join the community with the link in the description. I will also put it in the pinned comment. You'll be gaining access to not only those brilliant people and those brilliant FPL minds and their advice on your teams, as well as my own, but also football analysis, regular, exclusive football analysis. And if you decide to become a Diamond member, you will, of course, get the effective one-on-one service within the full personalized to your team and listen in on everyone else's advice as well. And in general, it's a very good discussion. You have a lot of macro discussion you might not get elsewhere in a more deeper fashion, and some tactical talk that you won't get elsewhere as well. So if you're interested in that, do join the membership with the link in the description. Like I've said so many times, I think there's minimal downside to at least trying it for a month, quite a lot of upside. Talking about chip strategy, I thought it very important to discuss it, and far easier to discuss it when I have a graphic at hand of this quality, courtesy of the GOAT planner, Ben Crellin. So go and say thank you on X for all his hard work that provide us with this and definitely improve our ranks at the end of the season. Now, well, I guess other people could use it better than you in relative sense. Lose, so then you. But nonetheless, let's just assume that we get it right. We can learn a lot here about what our chip strategy should potentially be. Now, of course, team dependent. I'm just going to take one-liner thinking for this, and you can apply the necessary bits for your team. 29 will see Villa and Liverpool blank, and we'll probably see Crystal Palace and Newcastle. That's the first thing to know. Then let's look at game week 34, where we will almost definitely see Villa and Manchester City blank, but we will also fairly likely, see Arsenal, Bournemouth, Brentford, Crystal Palace, Ipswich, Man United, Newcastle, and Nottingham Forest all blank as well. But the key to this is look at who doubles in 33 and look at who's at least fairly likely to double in game week 33. Aston Villa, Bournemouth, Crystal Palace, Manchester City, Manchester United, and Newcastle. Guys who you want in 33, you don't want in 34. And what is the best chip to get you out of that? The free hit. The bigger blank game week than 29, and it falls at a more optimal time, I would say, for the free hit. So as of now, given what happened in the FA Cup over the last weekend, I've really shifted to going for free 34, and I think you very much can. But what could potentially unlock this and allow you to not free hit in 29 and utilize, like, for example, a wildcard in 30, 31, 32, a bench boost in 33, a free hit in 34, and then your spare chip in 36 if you have the triple captain like myself. And if you don't, you probably won't be using any other chip, because personally, I think the AM should be used now. I literally no other chip to use. Well, I would really, really, really consider selling Mohamed Salah. If you look at his fixtures, right, 1, he doesn't have a double up after 20. 2, Everton at home in game week 30, tough. 3, Fulham away in game week 31 is tough. He will block the ability to get Haaland in 29 and captain him without using it, and his price will block you getting a more optimal double game weeks bench boost squad for 33. And the fixtures like 34 to 36 aren't particularly easy anyway. Obviously, it's him and he loves a big 6 game, especially when it's on television. But for those reasons, I would genuinely be more open to selling him. And that makes your life a lot easier in 29 because it allows you to hold at least one premium asset, which is Alexander Isak, who you will have a lot of value stored up in and you'll want for the foreseeable future after that. So that's kind of my thinking with strategy. I'm looking at selling Salah in 29, facilitating Haaland in and others in without using a free hit, resulting in that. What you'll find is like certain non-free hit 29 squads, for example, like the ones I planned with like Bruno in it and triple City, or at least double City and double Bournemouth and a couple others, actually have very good fixtures in 30 and 31, and you can very much keep them going and roll free transfers. And a wildcard before the bench boost in 33, bench boost in 33. And then by the time you get to 35, 36, 37, 38, where there might need to be some adjustments made to your team, you'll have free transfers in the bank. So for me, I think this is quite a good strategy, and I hope this fixture layout helps you understand where I'm coming from. Because, for example, right, let's say from game week 30, let's just say you are card straight after you free. You're in the position to, for whatever reason. Maybe your team's a little bit weaker, or you just went for assets you don't have as good fixtures after. E.g. like Forest to an extent, I guess. Well, all of a sudden now you want triple Manchester City, not double, but triple. All of a sudden you want triple Newcastle, and maybe you have to offload at least one for blank game week 29. Maybe you're really interested in buying Palace assets. Look who they've got in game week 30. And maybe you're interested in going back to Villa assets who you would have had to sell, like Rodgers and Watkins, right, in preparation for their double, and you think they'll do well beforehand. That's all accessible to yourself, right? There's a lot of upside, I feel like, in this strategy. And the amount you're going to lose in 29, I think, is quite minimal because you can still get a lot of the big hitters. Not all of them, but big hitters that free hit 29 will have. Should you be taking hits? Well, again, it's very much dependent on your team, but I will look at 2 particular cases which seem to be quite popular. Should you take a hit for a Bournemouth midfield? Well, the first and most important step, and the most simple step, is you must assess the prospect of your effective 7th attacker, the one you're going to start without a Bournemouth mid, and the one that would be replaced in the starting lineup by the Bournemouth midfield, right? You must assess their prospect. If you think a Bournemouth mid does not outscore them by at least 4 points, then it doesn't really make too much sense to make the move unless you're finding that little bit of money that you're going to save potentially down the line is very important to your team. Now, one person who you could be considering selling is the person who's the most sold asset this game week, and that is Anthony Gordon, right? So a couple of things to think. You might have to make this move anyway because Bournemouth have a game in 29 and Gordon doesn't, so gearing towards non-free hit 29. You could save some money because who knows, maybe they move during the game week or early next week and you don't want to make a move so early. And for all of those reasons, it would be easier to justify. And you're taking on a higher ceiling, given it's Southampton away. So for all of those reasons, I think it's fine to take a hit. And I would just take that bit of analysis, particularly the first step about the prospects of your effective 7th starting attacker, and apply that to your own team. I wouldn't, however, take a hit for Morgan Rogers because even though he has a double, I think you'll have to use another transfer to take him out, and that is just a little bit too much for me. So I would go straight to the Bournemouth midfielder and just bite the bullet. Like I said, I think Rogers is going to do well. I would still bite the bullet. And then should you hit out a defender for a Bournemouth defender, hitting out Hall is something that I've seen spoken about, and it's a similar line to the above. If you think that Bournemouth definitely keep a clean sheet, obviously Hall's going away to City, but if you could bench him and start someone else who's got a decent prospect, I don't think you can bank on a Bournemouth clean sheet with the way they play and the fact that Southampton play quite an aggressive style as well, and they've got some attack quality as well. That is for sure. But personally, I wouldn't be taking this hit for a Bournemouth defender unless like you're blocked down the line because one price change would take you out. I also think that Højsund might be worth it over Kirkes as well, given you get goal threat over assist threat primarily, and he's cheaper and he's better on the bonus. Those are all things to consider. If you're wondering why the mic is in the other hand this time around, it's because my wrist really started hurting on my left hand, and I have no intention of any more aggravation. So, moving on to the Bournemouth midfielder. This is a slide taken from Everything You Need to Know, and I would strongly recommend going to that video and listening to this particular section if you're still unclear about what asset I think is best and what asset you should be buying. I would say, again, I think Kluivert is the best option for the analysis that I provided earlier. But if you are in a position like myself where you're going for a Tara, I think there is enough, or I guess there's not enough in it, whereby you can just completely discount the 0.8 and be like, okay, Kluivert is absolutely worth 0.8 more. Do I think he's better? Yes. But do I think the difference is so big that I can't save money on a Tara to help my team down the line and hope that he gets close to him, matches his score, or even outscores him? Yeah, I think it's perfectly justifiable to bet on a Tara considering his position in particular. So I just wanted to talk about that and just bring this slide up, that if you did want the deeper analysis on the Bournemouth midfielder, you can absolutely go and check out that video, and it is there for you. And that is all she wrote for this video, ladies and gentlemen. Thought I would angle my wrist at a different position, make it slightly less aggravating, and move it back to the side because it felt so weird on my right hand side, even though I am dominantly right-handed, slightly ambidextrous. I wish you the best of luck for this gaming. I really hope it goes well for you and you get a big green arrow, especially if you're on Unai Emery. If you enjoyed the video, consider leaving a like on it as we push for 450 likes on the video, and subscribe if you have not already. There are thousands of you who have not clicked the button, which means you must enjoy the content somewhat to keep coming back. And it will take a millisecond out of your day and help me out a lot. And I would be greatly appreciative if you could press that button. Without anything else needing to be said, though, goodbye and the best of luck for this game week. It'll be a big one. I can imagine there are some huge swings around the corner, and I very much look forward to discussing the aftermath, most of the aftermath after game week after Sunday. So I shall see you then for transfer plans. Goodbye.